Hello and welcome to this video recording on how to deploy the Sophos XG firewall on Microsoft Azure using PowerShell. And we'll be talking about using the imperative method today. So in a minute, I'll get to what that means using the imperative method. So some of you watching this video may already know that the Sophos XG firewall, the public preview version was released to Microsoft Azure a couple of days ago. And I've made two separate recordings since then, demonstrating and explaining how to deploy it properly and how to get traffic flow to work correctly. Now, the first video I did on that was how to do that manually using the new Azure portal. And I did a demonstration of that and explained how you can get traffic flow working correctly. So then I did another video just a few days ago about using automation using PowerShell with Azure Ham templates, and that which is also known as the declarative automation method. And I demonstrated how to do that using a custom template and custom scripts that I wrote. And I have a video out on that also, so you can see the link here. I'll put the link in the description below also. But today it's all about using the imperative method. What that means, we'll talk about that shortly. First of all, a disclaimer. So disclaimer, this is a demonstration course about automating the deployment of Sophos XG Firewall on Azure. So this is not a course on Azure. We could go into details on Azure, but it's going to take us weeks to get through. But this one is just a demonstration on Sophos XG, deploying it on Azure using a particular method, using automating the deployment. So not full details about the operations of Azure. Also, I would like to mention this. Whatever we're going to be doing in this demonstration and also in past demonstrations, actually, whatever we're going to be doing when it comes to demonstrating anything on Azure, costs apply to that. So either you're using the free trial, if you're using the free trial, you get a certain amount of money to spend. If you're using MSDN subscription, you have a certain amount of money to spend that you can run through. And also, if you're using pay as you go, you will be paying for it. So always keep that in mind whenever you're trying to practice or demonstrate anything on Microsoft Azure. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about today is why use this method at all. So few days or weeks ago, I demonstrated and explained and went into a bit of details into how to do the manual deployment. So you know how to do the manual deployment. Is there any reason why you may want to use this automated method that I'm talking about? Yes, there are. So all the reasons why you need to automate anything in IT infrastructure applies. Obviously, you get a situation where you can do easy to deploy. So the time that it takes you to deploy is really short, because the amount of time that you basically have to spend is the time to get the initial script running, and after that, just the short amount of time it takes you to modify or adapt the script is what you need to get a deployment. So you get your deployment time goes way down. You're not wasting a lot of man hours, or just doing something that's repeatable that you could be accomplishing using a script. So that's one obvious benefit. Another benefit to using this method is if you go to the UI, and actually let me bring up the Azure portal here. So let's bring that up. Let's go to portal, oh, sorry, that's portal.azure.com. And if you try using the Azure portal to deploy, for example, the Sophos XG firewall, one of the things that you realize is that you're limited to deploying using two network interface cards. So let's bring that up here. And then I just go to search for the marketplace and I search for Sophos. And I'll just try to get through this as quickly as possible. And then if I just click on create and try to create one, give it a name, Sophos XG test. Oh, something happened there. Let's go back. Okay, let's do that again. Let's give it a name. Sophos XG test. Just give it a username. That's just a placeholder. So password. And then if I just create a new resource group, I go OK to that. And then virtual machine size. So if I choose the D3 option, actually, so this one. So I think with this I can have up to 4 network interface cards. So I select there. It asks me to fill in some details. So I went through this in the manual recording. So it may take a while because then it goes and searches and to check if I've got an existing storage account, which I don't. So it should come back to allow me to create one now. But where I want to actually get to is if you look here, if you look at this situation, I can select my virtual network. I can select my subnet, the public IP address. But if you look at it, I'm actually limited in terms of the amount of subnets that I can select. So I can select my virtual network here. I can select the subnet here. I can't actually go beyond the number that's been presented to me here. So if I want to go beyond whatever number that's been presented to me, so I thought it was 2. The last one I did was 2. I'm sure it was 2. But for some reason, I can only see one, the option to create just one subnet here. But whichever the case, you're limited to whatever you're presented and through this portal. But if you're going to be deploying more than whatever you're presented via the portal, if you're going to be deploying, if you're going to be having that type of deployment, you have to do it via PowerShell, you have to do it via automation, either via declarative method or imperative method. So just a quick overview. What's the difference? Manual deployment is the one that I just showed quickly. Imperative automation, so imperative and declarative, it's something that many programmers will be aware of. So imperative is where you have to specify line by line, not only what you want the script to do, but how the script should do it. In other words, if I want a virtual machine that has 2 network interface cards, I have to basically specify every single step in the script and say, I want you to create a virtual machine and call it this name and give it this IP. So this is how you're going to do it. You're going to be using this command to create that virtual machine. I want you to give it this network interface card, and this is the command that you will use to assign this network interface. So I'm basically going line by line, explaining or highlighting every single step I want to do and how to get it done. Declarative, on the other hand, it's a bit more effective. Actually, it's not a bit more effective. It's much more effective than imperative mode. So because declarative, like in the case of like my previous demonstration when I used the declarative automation method, what we had to do was customize a template. And then even though we use PowerShell for the deployment, but it's much more easier to adjust a template than to go back and adjust all your steps about how to get things done. So that may not make full sense to you now, but hopefully, as you go on with your studies on Azure automation or PowerShell scripting, things will become much more clearer. So imperative automation method. So we basically be specifying line by line what to do and how to do it. And that's what that means. So again, one of the main reasons why I want to use this method is because we can customize beyond what we're presented on the portal during deployment. So I'm just going to minimize this and then we'll move over to the next step. Okay, next step, there are certain prerequisites that you have to be able to use this method I'll be demonstrating today. Number one is you have to have the latest version of Azure PowerShell installed. So that's really easy to install. So there's, I think the easiest way that I know of to install is something called the Web Platform Installer. So if you just Google Web Platform Installer, look for it, download it and install it. And I already have it installed on my machine. Web Platform Installer, and on the Web Platform Installer, after you have it installed, you have the option there to install the latest version of the Azure PowerShell, both for the classic mode and for the Azure Resource Manager. So you have Azure PowerShell here, and just click Add and then click Install here. So also I will recommend, if you've got Visual Studio, which I use here, I use Visual Studio for some of my Azure deployment also. I will recommend for you to install the Visual Studio SDK, because that's really, really useful. There's a lot of benefits to using that. So let's go back to our outline. So install the latest version of Azure PowerShell. Showed you how to install it. Another way so I will be posting documentation in the description below about steps to take. So install latest version of Azure PowerShell. Number two, open Azure PowerShell and log into your Azure account. What do I mean by that? For example, I can just right click on my machine and go, I can right click on my machine and go run ISC as administrator, and that will open PowerShell ISC, which I already have up here. So then I get this, I get PowerShell ISC. So then I said, log into your Azure account. So the way you do that is I just go log in Azure RM account. So that will take a while, but hey, you get there. I can just open a new one if that's taking a while to complete. Okay, yeah, it's there now. It's just taking it a while to search through the models. So log in as your PowerShell, I press enter. It comes up with this menu and say enter username and password. I enter the username and password that I will normally use to log into Azure. And I enter my password. Oh, sorry. Got my email address wrong there. And then I'll enter my password, my passphrase, and then I'll just click sign in. That's all I'll do. So I'll go, and after I type enter, I'll sign in there. It comes up and says, David, now you're signed in. So if I do get Azure RM subscription, shows me the current subscriptions that I have on this account. Okay, so now we logged in. So next thing will be we need to purchase a Sophos XG Firewall license or get a trial license. The reason is because after we do our deployment, we need to set up a Sophos XG Firewall. The first thing that you have to do when setting up the Sophos XG Firewall, either on-prem or on Azure, is you have to apply a serial number and then you have to register the device. So this serial number, you can get a trial one, or you can bring something called bring your own license. So, or you can, if you have a license that's purchased from Sophos or from one of Sophos partners, there's a serial number that you're given, and then you can use that to register the appliance. So whatever the case, for example, I can go here and type Sophos XG Firewall trial, and then you see an option. All you need to do is just click the button and then follow the instruction. You'll get information about how to get it. So yeah, you put in your email address, and then I think you get a serial number emailed to you that you can use for trial. Okay, so then the next thing I said, enable Sophos XG Firewall on Azure for programmatic deployment. Again, what does this mean by enable this for programmatic deployment? So for us to be able to deploy anything in an automated fashion, either imperative automation or declarative automation, we have to enable whatever that resource is or whatever that image is, we have to enable it for programmatic deployment. So here's how to quickly verify what's enabled for programmatic deployment. I can go on the billing on the left-hand side on the Azure portal, and then I select whatever my subscription is, the active one, which in my case is my MSDN subscription, and then I can see all settings here. And then if I click on that, I'll see programmatic deployment here, and then I'll see all the marketplace items that I have that have been enabled for programmatic deployment. So if I don't have this enabled and I try to do deployment via Powershell script, it's going to fail if this is set to disable. So I can disable it from here, I can enable it. So you may check yours and then you find this is empty. So the way to get this, to get the Sophos XG firewall here is actually really simple. All you need to do is go through the manual method that I went through for deployment, which is to search for it in the marketplace and then deploy it. So once you deploy it the first time and accept all legal agreement, automatically it's going to be enabled for programmatic deployment. So that's how you get that. And then once it's here, you can always come over here and disable it if you want to. Let's move on. So now let's talk about deploying XG firewall. So I'll put a link in the description below because I got a PowerShell script that I wrote, which you can use. You can customize it as you want. So if I go under my GitHub account, and then I'll put the link to the script in the description below. But I'll just be running through the script and explaining what the script is doing. So this is the script. I'll put the link in the description below that I wrote. So feel free to customize it or modify it to fit your environment or whatever environment that you want. And yeah, we'll just run through that script and then see how far we get. So if I bring up my PowerShell ISC and then bring up the script. So I think what I'll do is before I start, let me show you where we're going to start from. So if I go, so we're going to start with absolutely nothing. So all we have is the script. We're starting with absolutely nothing. And when we finish, this is what we'll end up with. We'll end up with this. So you may be thinking, what in the world is this? We'll get there and you see what this means. So let's go through the script. So the very first thing that we'll do is we'll define variables. I won't be going into details about that. There's a lot of variables, they mean different things. I've put descriptions next to them. So there's a lot of different things that these variables mean. So they are pretty much self-explanatory. So just run through. If you want to change the names or change whatever variable you want to change, feel free to modify and change them. So now you have the variables assigned. The next thing to do is now we want to create the resource group. So again, remember we're starting with absolutely nothing. And what we'll basically be doing is this. So every single deployment that you do on Microsoft Azure Resource Manager, sorry, every single deployment lives in something called a resource group. So the very first thing before we do any other deployment is we have to get this resource group ready. We have to create this resource group. And that's exactly what we will be doing first of all. So we'll be creating a resource group. Yeah. And then we're going to be creating something called a storage account and a storage container. What does that mean? So what that means is this. If I go bring this up and go, let's just go here, and I'll just go here also. Actually, I'll just go. So let's do that again because I want something that's lighter. Let's select this. Yeah, that's probably better. And then I'll do this also. So again, that's the resource group. The first thing that we'll create is the resource group. Then after creating the resource group, we're going to be creating this, which is the storage account. And what the storage account is virtual machines, including the XG firewall and Windows VMs or Linux VMs, whatever you're going to be deploying. They have disk drives. They use virtual hard drives. Same technology used in virtualization, virtual hard drives. So these virtual hard drives, they live in something called a storage account, which lives in the resource group. So again, the overall huge rectangle is the resource group. Then we're going to be creating here. We're going to have a storage account. And what that storage account will contain is it will contain the virtual hard drives for our different machines. So let's go ahead and create that. And then also I need to mention this. So again, first of all, resource group, then storage account. But then within the storage account, there's something that's different, something called container. So container is just like a folder. It's more than a folder because there are different types. But this is a container is just for this purpose. Just take it as a folder that our virtual hard drives will be saved in or will be stored in. So that's what we'll be creating in this section. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll just bring this up again. First of all, I run the part of the variables. So I'll just select that and then just run this part using PowerShell. And then we've got something wrong. Create a new container. Oh, okay. I think I've got something. Yeah, I definitely have something wrong. Yeah, that's right. So what I've done is I've selected beyond what I should select. So I'll just minimize this and just go select this and let's go run that again. So that applies all the variables that I want to apply. So now I can minimize this and go ahead, create the resource group. So again, notice that I'm excluding these brackets that I've used to group the different sections together. So I'll just run this. And then what that will do is that's created the resource group. And then the next thing, if I go back to the Azure portal, let's go back to the Azure portal. If I go back here and I go on the resource group now, I should have a resource group with the variable that I named in the variable section. And then very soon I should have a storage account listed here. So we'll just wait for that to be done. So that's created. So now it's creating the storage account, then it's going to create a storage container. And we will see that shortly. And here we go. It's created a storage account. If I refresh that, there we go. That's the storage account. And then within the storage account, it has a container created within it already. So now we're done with this part. So let's move on to the next one. So let's move on. Let's go for, okay, that'll be on the blobs. And that's the container. It's a blob. So I'll minimize this. And then the next thing that we'll now be doing, so now all we have is we just have our resource group, storage account, and a storage container. So next thing is we'll be creating the virtual network and the subnet. So the next thing that we'll be doing, let's bring this up again, is we'll be creating this entity, which will be, let's move this to the middle here. Yeah, that's good enough. Yeah, middle there, virtual network and the different subnets. And I'll explain what that means. Oh, need this again. Okay, virtual networks. And I'll explain what that means. So see these two, they are all a single virtual network. So let me bring them down. So what we'll do is we'll create this virtual network and I'll bring the virtual network symbol here. Okay, so let's bring the virtual network symbol. And here we go. This is a virtual network. And within this virtual network, we'll have different subnets. So this is not the virtual subnet symbol, but just, so this is the overall virtual network, but within this, we'll have different subnets. So let's go for this. Let's go this subnet, this subnet 2, and this subnet 3, and then we'll have subnet 4 also. So these are the things that we'll have. So now we have subnet 1 here. So subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3, subnet 4. So we're going to have these 4 subnets within this single virtual network. So that's what we'll be doing next. So let's bring up the PowerShell script again. So create the virtual networks and the virtual network and the subnet. So that's what we'll be doing here. So again, I just run this part of the script, excluding the curly brackets. And if I run that, and then if I go back to my Azure portal, and then if I go back to my resource group and I refresh that, I should see my virtual network already created. And then if I refresh and I keep refreshing, I'll just wait for a few more minutes. I'm going to find out that it's going to create the 4 subnets that I'm going to have in this particular deployment. So the number of subnets that you deployed depends on whatever infrastructure you're building. So let's bring up the PowerShell script. I keep thinking TeamViewer is my PowerShell ISC. Firstly, I need to close it. Okay, so subnets already. Let's see. Oh, okay, yeah. So virtual network is ready. Subnets are ready also. So what we've got here is we've got the one subnet, the LAN 1 subnet, LAN 2 subnet, and LAN 3 subnet. So 3 LAN subnets and one subnet in this case. So the reason why we're not saying the one subnet there is because the way it works in Azure is that we create a configuration, and then the configuration for the subnets are attached to the virtual network. So if I go under the virtual network here, I should see all my 4 subnets under here. So those are my 4 subnets that I've created with their IP address ranges. Okay, so let's move on. So that's what we have now. So next one, create network interfaces and public IPs and the public IP. So this is where it can get a bit confusing if you're coming, especially if you've not been involved in like cloud, a lot of cloud deployments. This may get confusing. If you've been involved in cloud deployment, either Google or AWS, you should be familiar with this already. So the things that we're deploying to Azure, they're called resources. So on Azure, even the network interface card, it's a different resource from the virtual machine. So that can get confusing for people that, hold on, you're having a network, you're creating a network interface card. Where's the VM? There's no VM yet at this point. All we're doing at this point is just creating a network interface card. And this is what we'll have at the end of this particular section of the script. So let me bring this here. Let's go. We're going to deploy a virtual network interface card into this subnet, one into each subnet, and this will be for our XG firewall. So we're deploying one into each subnet. So let's go. So we've got 4 network interface cards deployed into that will be deploying into each subnet. And then we mentioned deploy the public IP also. What do we mean by that? So again, this is where some things can get confusing. So we're just going to be deploying. So a public IP is a resource on Azure. It's a separate resource. This time we'll be creating a static public IP. Now highlight that and make that bold. And then to make it a bit clearer, I'll just go, let's bring the cloud symbol here so as to make things a bit um, more fun. Okay, I got cloud symbol, and let's bring that here. I'll try to minimize this a bit, and I'll go, that's the internet over here. And this is my static public IP address. So again, always remember the static public IP or dynamic public IP, it's a separate resource. So at the end, this is what we'll have. Now the picture is not yet clear, but it's building up. So we're going to be creating 4 network interface cards for the XG, one inside each subnet, and then a static public IP, all not assigned to anything at this point. So let's go ahead and run that part of the script. So I'll minimize the one for the virtual network. So network interface cards, Let me highlight that and I'll just run that. And then it's going to start. And then what we can start seeing here is that if I go back under resource groups and I go under my resource group, I should start seeing different resources. So now I can see the public IP address has been created, which from our diagram, that is this public IP, the static public IP over here. We've created that. And then if I keep refreshing, you start seeing other things like the um, network cards being created. So yeah, that's done. And if I refresh this, now we have all our LAN cards. So this is basically what we have as at now. So let's move on. So we're almost there. We're almost there. So now we're in the main part. I want the main part where we create a Sophos XG firewall. We deploy it on Azure. Nice. But here's the thing. What we're doing in this section is we're going to be creating the Sophos XG firewall. It's going to obviously have hard drive. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. So we're going to be creating it inside the container that is inside the storage account that is inside the resource group that we created earlier, the very first things that we created. So that's what we're going to be doing in this section. So, but apart from that, we're going to be attaching this VM that we're creating. We're going to be attaching this to the network interface cards that we created. And then you now see everything begin to take shape and everything begin to form together now. So it's all, I know it's all may not all be making sense at the moment, but very soon it's all gonna make sense to you. So let's get the XG firewall. And what we'll have at the end of this is this. We'll have a Sophos XG firewall deployed to Azure. We'll have a storage account. So let me bring in the icon. So we'll have well, that's storage account, but I will just use it to signify hard drive. Yeah, that's not the correct icon, but you know what I mean. So I'll just go. So what I'll be doing, I'll create two hard drives. So one OS drive and one data drive. Yeah, and then I'm gonna be attaching this to the different network cards. So I should probably use a better one than that. So let's use this one, and then I'll just make the size a bit, and then I'll just go for that. So this is what we'll be doing in this section. We're basically gonna deploy our XG firewall to Azure, attach the network interface cards that we created earlier to it, create the virtual hard drives, attach it to the VM. And then here's another interesting thing, which again can get confusing for many people. We're now going to be taking this network card that's on the one subnet of the XG, and we're going to be attaching it to this static public IP that we created earlier, which is reachable on the internet. So hopefully this is making more sense now. So this is basically what we'll end up with at the end of this particular section. Now this section may take a while to complete. So what I may do is I may pause the recording while it's completing and then come back once it's done. So you can see where we're specifying the data drive and the OS drive and all the other stuff. And then we're attaching the network cards. And let's highlight it to the correct point, which is where we create the firewall VM. And then once I click run this selection, deployment is going to start. And then I'll pause this recording and then I'll come back. Once everything is ready, at the end of the section, this is what we'll have, what we are seeing in this diagram. Yeah, welcome back. So that took roughly around 8 minutes to complete. So just staying on that for a while. So that should begin to give you like one of the ideas why even the the declarative automation method is preferable. Because not only is the imperative method, not only is it much more complicated to maintain, because if there were to be like any changes in like the way Azure operations work, and then you have to make changes to your PowerShell script. You have to go back and start adjusting them line by line. Whereas in declarative automation method, you're only adjusting your template. So, but not only that, it is also much slower. So if you remember, like when I did the declarative one, it only took a couple of, I think about 7 minutes to get every single deployment, networks, everything done. Whereas we've been on this for like a while now and we're still not done. So let's move on. So what we currently have is we have the VM already, the XG VM already deployed to Azure. So if I bring that up and if I refresh, you see our XG firewall there. So it's been attached to the NIC. It's got its own. If I go under the store and I go under the blob and I go under the container, you will see the virtual hard drives of the XG firewall in there. And you see the virtual hard drives in there and stuff. So everything is all good. We can move on. So let's move on to the next part of the script. Again, just show you a picture of where we currently are. We're here. So just based on this, I can now reach the XG from the internet, because again, remember the way it works. So this is attached to this and this is attached to this. But let's see if I can reach the XG from the internet. So let's see. Let's go get this public IP that is attached to this network interface card, which is attached to the one subnet of the XG, and let's see if we can reach the XG firewall on port 4444, which is the web admin port. So let's get that. Let's go back to them. I'll go to on the virtual machines, click on the XG machine, and here, so I can either use the IP address, I can use the host name. So if I go HTTPS, let me use the IP. You can use the host name also if I want to, 4444, and if I press enter, and there you go, I can reach the XG firewall. So that's nice. So let's move on. So the next thing that I'll do is actually, let me show you something, because we'll make a bit of an adjustment here. And I want to show you what we'll be adjusting. So let's go to network interfaces. Let's go to this one NIC. And it's got no network security group attached to it. But what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be creating something called a network security group. And what that means is this. So now I can get to the XG on port 4444. Let's see if I can reach it on port 22. So let's go. Get the IP address. Let's see if I can reach it on port 22. Yep, I can, because it's coming up and prompting me. But what we're going to do with the next phase, which is the network security group that we'll be creating, and I'll minimize this one, is to allow all traffic, because at the moment, I don't want to be doing double filtering. There's nothing wrong in doing double filtering. So what I can do is I can create a network security group and attach it to either this subnet or to this network interface card. And what that will be is basically the allowed port inbound and outbound to either this subnet or to this network interface card. And the reason why we want to do that is, for example, let's say the XG is doing IPS, but then it's getting busy because you're getting attacked a lot. For example, what you do in the real world is you contact your ISP and say, hey, I'm getting attacked from these source IPs. Can you block those IPs from even getting to me? So that's what you could do with network security group. So even before they get to the XG, which is the network interface card, you can define what is allowed and what is not allowed on the Azure Fabric for that network interface card or for that subnet. But in this case, this is a lab environment, not a production environment. I would just be saying, hey, allow everything to this port, or sorry, to this network interface card, because this guy will be handling all my filtering anyway, and maybe I don't want to do double filtering. But again, there's nothing wrong in doing double filtering. So, but just for a lab environment, I'll do that. So I'll expand that and I'll just highlight this part, and I'll just run that, and that will create the network security group and attach it to the one subnet of the XG. And that's basically saying allow everything. So by the time this finishes, if I go back to this, and then if I go back to the overview when it finishes, I should be able to see that it is now attached to a network security group. So we just wait for that to finish. Or while that's been completed, I'll move on to the next one. Yep, that's already done. Or almost done. Almost done. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next thing I said, create a user-defined route to route all LAN traffic to the XG. So even though I'm feeling a bit tired, this one requires a lot of explanation. So I want you to pay special attention to this part. So if you get this part wrong, you will have trouble with your traffic flow. You need to understand this part correctly. It's very important. If you don't get it the first time, go over it again and again and again till you understand it. Here's the thing with Azure. By default on Azure, so all these are within a single virtual network, they're different subnets within a single virtual network. By default, all these subnets can communicate with one another by default. And the communication is not going via the XG. So the fact that you have all these different subnets in the same virtual network, Azure by itself has set up default routing between them. So basically, this guy over here, anyone on this subnet can talk to this guy on this subnet without having to go to the XG in any way. And the same thing goes. This guy on this port can talk to this guy on this port, which we don't want because this is attached to our public IP. So this guy can talk over to this guy without having to go to the XG. They're just communicating with one another using the Azure fabric. That is the default behavior. We need to understand that that is the default behavior. But what we want is not that. What we want is we want a situation that now that we've introduced the XG, even if this guy wants to come in, even if there's a machine on this subnet, which will deploy very soon, wants to communicate with a machine on this subnet, it's going via the XG, and XG is doing all kinds of security and rules there. And anything on this machine also, on this subnet, they can communicate directly to the internet without going via the XG. In other words, Azure has its own default gateway for all the subnets. Let's remove that. For all the subnets that they are all connecting to like this default gateway, so that if they want to get out to the internet, they don't need the XG in any way. They could just go a machine here on the subnet, just go through its NIC and just go to the Azure Fabric, which sends it out to the internet. That's the default behavior. Let's get rid of that. That's the default behavior, but that's not what we want. So how do we modify that behavior? That's very important. The way we modify that behavior is to apply something called the user-defined route, which is basically a custom routing table to instruct these different subnets to say, hey, I've got a network appliance on your subnet. Any communication that you want to send to this other subnet, don't send it directly through the Azure Fabric. Send it to this guy and let him handle that. And we do the same. So if you're going here, you have to go through the XG and do the same for all the subnets. And then we'll say, hey, also, if you're going out to the internet, don't just go to your, default Azure gateway and go out to the internet. No, that's not the behavior we want. What we want you to do is to send whatever packet that you want outbound, send it to the XG so that the XG can route that out to the internet. And that is basically what we'll do. Now I'm running out of time because I think this video is going too long than expected, but let's do that first of all, and then we probably will just wrap it up there. So that's what we're doing in this section. We're creating this user-defined route. And you can see I'm saying to subnet 1, for example, route all outbound packets going out to the internet, route it to the XG. Route all packet that you want to send to LAN 2, route it to the XG. And I'm creating all these user-defined routes or custom routes. So I'll just highlight that part and I'll run that. So I hope that makes much sense to you. So what we're basically doing is now we're not creating like anything that you can see here, but it's just modifying the default routing behavior of our Azure subnet, of our Azure network. So that is what we're doing here. And after that completes, the rest of it is what we can now start doing is we can now start. So let's copy this. We can now start deploying other network interface cards into this subnet. So for example, I want to deploy a machine into this subnet. I deploy its network interface card into this subnet, and then I basically deploy the machine also into this subnet. And everything, I've already modified the behavior. So the behavior is exactly as I want it. I'm just deploying the machine. So if I get the VM icon, and then go, that's a bit large, but actually I'll just make it smaller. Okay, that's better. Okay. Just highlight there so I can clone there. So I can now start deploying machine into this different subnet. So first of all, I deploy the network interface card, I deploy the machines, and then I attach the machines to the network interface card, which is already deployed to this subnet. And we're all good to go. And then their storage, their virtual hard drives, I can also create their virtual hard drives on this storage account inside the container that we created earlier, and attach them to the machines, and then we are good to go. And then that's everything all completed. So let's see if I use the defined route, it's all done. It's almost there. And if I go back to the Azure portal, what I should be seeing is that if I go, for example, if I go to on the virtual machines, see my XG machine, and then if I go under my network interface, and then I have this here, for example, if I select that, I'll see the subnet that this interface is attached to, or this network interface card is attached to. And then I can click on there, and I think on the, so this is the virtual network. Let's go for the subnet. Or an easier way, guys, just search for route tables. Simple. That's much easier. And then we'll see the route tables that we've created, or the user-defined route tables that we've created here, and you can see all the routes that is attached to it. Now we can start deploying machines into this different subnet, and the operation will be as we want it to be. So I hope that was very useful and explanatory. Again, I recommend watching my previous videos in order to get a more clearer picture of what we are actually doing, because I explained the manual one, and then this is the automated method using imperative mode. So I hope this has been informative for you, and I hope this has been helpful to you. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them when I'm less busy. And also I'll advise you, or I'll recommend checking out the Sophos community page for more information about the Sophos XG Firewall on Azure. Thanks very much, and see you in the next video. Bye.